Hey folks, welcome to Chapter 9. Again, I think my most favorite of all the chapters, dealing with attracting and retaining the best employees. That's HR. You know how I feel so far. I think HR is probably the most vital resource, and I think many of you might have outstanding careers ahead of you in the HR field if you haven't already begun that journey. And so I think it's a great career. I think it's lots of great opportunities in the HR field. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about what that looks like. So in terms of our learning objective for today, right, we're going to talk about the major components of HR management, identify the steps of the HR planning process, describe cultural diversity, and understand some of the challenges and opportunities associated with it. We're going to explain the objectives and uses of job analysis, how do we recruit and select employees, primary elements of compensation, employee training, as well as performance appraisal and feedback. So let's get started. So HR management overview, human resources, those are the people who work within the organization, most important and valuable resource for any business. And I totally agree with that. HR management is the activities involved in acquiring, maintaining, and developing an organization's human resources. Those three things. If you get nothing else out of this, it's to be in HR, you need to be able to acquire, maintain, and develop the most important resource to any company, and that's their people. HR activities, the first one, the acquisition, include planning the various activities that lead to hiring new employees. Altogether, the planning phase of HR includes 5 separate activities. The first one is determining staffing needs and supply. So forecasting, depending on what's going on in your organization and within the economy, you're going to need to figure out, are you going to be growing or are you going to be shrinking? Okay. Next, you need to understand job analysis. Determine the specific nature of all the roles that you're looking to recruit for. Okay. Next, you're going to be doing recruiting. We'll talk about the difference between external recruiting and internal recruiting. Okay. This is where you go out, and for those of you looking or even hiring, you're going to be on LinkedIn, you're going to be on Handshake, you're going to be on Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Glassdoor. You're going to be out at career fairs. Those are all the places that you go out and find talent. Next is selecting. How do we select the right person? Okay, we've recruited, we've brought in a bunch of people to interview. Now, how do we select? How do we know that that person is the right person? Okay, and then orienting. Once they're on board, the most important piece is making sure that we keep them. Okay, and so the first step in keeping a good employee is making sure that they understand the orienting piece, so training, development, and all that stuff. Okay. Again, maintaining human resources consists primarily of encouraging employees to remain in the firm and work effectively by using a variety of HR programs. Okay. Those include employee relations, compensation, and benefits. Okay. Keeping people happy through these three, right? Employee relations is going to be about making sure that employees are heard, okay? Whatever the issue, whatever celebrating people, even disciplining people is part of employee relations. Compensation, that doesn't always equate to money. It could be autonomy, time off, benefits. It could be good healthcare plans, educational, payments, 401k. These are all the 3 things that help keep people within their organization. The development phase of HR is concerned with improving employee skills and expanding their capabilities. The 2 important activities in this phase are training and development and performance appraisal. So training and development, getting people trained on different programs, getting people trained to be acclimated to the culture of the organization, and then letting them know how they're doing. Marcus Buckingham talks about, don't do this on a yearly basis or a quarterly basis or a monthly basis. On a weekly basis, you should be talking to your employees, asking them, how are you doing? What are your priorities? And How can I be a resource to you as your manager? Okay. So, and then there's those yearly performance appraisals. Let's look at the year. How'd you do? How'd we do to best serve you? Okay. Those are vital and they have to be done. A forecast of human resources supply must take into account both the present workforce and any changes. Two useful techniques are the replacement chart and the skills inventory. The replacement chart is if this person leaves tomorrow, who in the organization or outside of the organization that could potentially replace them, okay? Who can replace this vital person that potentially could leave at any time, okay? It's called succession planning. Skills inventory, those are the key skills that are needed to keep my company going. If I have a big manufacturing facility and I have a specific machine, I need to make sure that multiple people are trained on that machine, so in case somebody leaves, then somebody else can jump right in and take over, okay? So understanding what are the vital skills to the organization and who has those skills. Okay, so the replacement chart, again, list of key personnel and their replacements, and then skills inventory database of current employees and their skills. Matching supply with demand. You know, when demand is predicted to be greater than supply, HR planners must make plans to recruit new employees, okay? So when unemployment is low, we have a higher demand, and we need to go out and we need to find people to come work in our organization. And then just the opposite. When unemployment's high and supply is greater than demand, you have to take that into account as well, and it could result in furloughs or layoffs. And so that's part of being in business, okay? Both the good and the bad. Cultural diversity in HR. I can't emphasize this enough. Diversity in general with an organization is so important. The more diversity you have, the more ideas you're going to have, the more people that can come in and bring a different outlook. You know, you'd never want groupthink within an organization. Diversity, both from a cultural perspective, a gender perspective, an idea perspective, is important. It's going to make your company stronger. It's going to make it more profitable. It's going to make it longer lasting, right? So, cultural diversity presents a challenge. Managers should view it as an opportunity rather than a limitation. So it might be harder to find or to develop a more culturally diverse group, but you need to do it. That's part of your company should be a reflection of our society as a whole, and we are a diverse society. So I just can't emphasize that enough. Okay? We need a diverse workforce, and each company should have a diverse workforce. It just makes you stronger. I'll leave it at that. Job analysis. Job analysis is basically a systematic procedure for studying jobs to determine their elements and their requirements, right? It's what creates the job description, okay? Recruiting. Recruiting is the process of attracting qualified job applicants. They seek applicants outside of the firm and then potentially within the firm, or typically both. So, external recruiting. That's attracting job applicants from outside the organization. You can find them through LinkedIn, Handshake, ZipRecruiter, Glassdoor, Indeed, okay? On college campuses, you can find them at job fairs, okay? The advantages of finding somebody externally is, again, you bring in new talent. You bring in people with a different understanding of the company, and so they may have a bigger perspective and can lend more, or they may have a skill the company needs that they don't currently have, so you can bring in people with a different skill set. The disadvantages are, you know, again, how do I fit this person who's an outsider, bring them in, and how are they going to fit culturally within my organization? Okay? And am I passing somebody who's internally a good fit but not maybe a great fit? Are we passing them over to bring somebody else in? And what does that do? Does that create some sort of animosity within the workforce? And so there are advantages and disadvantages to both. Internal recruiting, basically that's considering present employees for available positions, okay, being promoted from within. The advantages of that, it builds a deeper culture. It builds trust. It builds basically a workforce that is committed to your organization. The disadvantages are, maybe people get complacent. Bringing in outsiders sometimes is a great idea because, again, you potentially get that new skill set. You get somebody who can kind of look at the organization from a different perspective, and that's an advantage. How do we select employees? Basically, there's several opportunities, right? That's the process of gathering information about applicants for a position and then using that information to choose the right applicant. Common, techniques are basically the application itself, and then using behavioral-based interview questions. Tell me about a time, ... So tell me about a time that you had to deal with a difficult customer. Tell me about a time that you succeeded. Tell me about a time that you failed. Tell me a story about a manager who you disagreed with. What was the situation and how did it resolve itself? Or did it? So being able to have people tell stories. You as interviewees need to understand you need to be a good storyteller when it comes to interviews. So think of some good stories that will apply to some of these potential behaviors. Tell a good story. Okay, references. The best way to find out what people do well is to talk to the people they've worked with in the past. So if you can get references, that's always great. Assessments, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of using assessments to determine hiring practices or hiring, but some people use MBTI, some people even use strengths, so that's that. Social networking sites, employers are going to vet you and they're going to look at your social media, so make sure that you know what's on your social media, and inevitably you should just make it private. All of your social media should be private if you're worried about anything on there. And so they could potentially look at that, okay, and make a hiring decisions based on that without actually telling you that's the reason they're not hiring you. So be aware of that. Compensation, basically there's 5 types. There's hourly wage, there's salary, there's commission, there's incentive pay, and there's profit sharing. Basically, profit sharing is that distribution at the end of the year. There's a percentage of the company's the firm's profits that get distributed amongst all employees. Benefit programs, this is another way to incentivize people. There's, pay for time not worked, so vacation or PTO or PPO, insurance packages, pension and retirement programs, unemployment insurance, Social Security, tuition remission. The big one's probably insurance. It's probably one of the costliest things there is for both the employee side and the employer side. And so that's a big one. The other benefits could be more intangible, could just be time off, work from home, particularly now during COVID, work from home, or just during any pandemic. Working from home is key. Having that ability to be autonomous in how you do your work. Those are all extremely important. Okay? And those potentially are going to drive people to be more committed to your organization. Training development, 2 types of really training. Employee training, that's the process of teaching people technical skills or just, again, how they fit into the culture, right? Having them understand the norms of the organization. And then management development. That's the process of preparing managers, employees to be managers, to be leaders. And every good company should have a good management leadership development program. Because in the end, most employees want to progress through the organization. And so train them before they get there. Performance appraisals, basically these are the evaluations of employees' current and potential levels of performance. The process has 3 objectives, really: to let workers know how they're doing, to distribute rewards such as raises and promotions, and then to monitor the progress of employees. Are we selecting the right people? And a lot of times we can find this out. Again, this shouldn't be done on a yearly basis. This should be done weekly. Each manager should go to their staff and say, individually, and say, hey, what are your priorities? How are you doing? How can I be a resource to you? What's going on? If you do that on a weekly basis, you'll know exactly where your employees stand when it comes time to do these yearly or quarterly performance appraisals, okay? And they'll know where you stand, Okay, it's important. I always used to say, I should never be surprised when an employee leaves, and an employee should never be surprised when they're terminated, right? At any given time, you should know where you stand within the organization, and in any given time, the manager should know where their employees stand, okay? Two type of evaluation techniques: objective methods. Those are the objective appraisal methods used. Some measure, like you've hit this many phone calls, you've hit this much in sales revenue, you've hit this much in production. And so we can quantify it and we can measure it, and then we can figure out where you sit. And then finally, the judgmental appraisal methods. Really, these are ranking is used. The manager ranks subordinates from best to worst, or a rating scale that consists of numerical statements that potentially really has nothing to do about your work performance. Okay, it's very judgmental. Okay, and so that one's probably not as effective. There we have it, folks. The most important resource, human resources. And so again, I hope many of you potentially find a career in this field, because it's an amazing field that I think many people can do well in. So have a great day.